The Big Why by Robert Sheinfeld. Welcome to Readers of the Ultimate Key to Happiness. As promised in this document, I will give you a detailed summary of the Big Why behind why the mind machine was created and why it operates as it does. Key point: be prepared for a lot of possible noise from the mind machine as you read this document, saying such things as it's too way out, too woo-woo, too new age crap. In this mini ebook, you'll find a brief overview of what I call the teachings. It is not intended to be complete, and it is expected you'll have many questions when you're done with reading. Should you wish to get your questions answered, I'll show you how you can go deeper at the end. The teachings were brought to my awareness through an unusual and often excruciatingly painful journey that lasted several decades. Additional details about my personal journey and story are available on my website, www.robertsheinfeld.com. My style as a teacher and coach has always been there, done that, to a very deep degree personally, then pop up and share what I discover and experience. As a result, the teachings have changed, expanded, and transformed as my journey unfolded. The teachings have been especially designed to and aggressively challenge the status quo, what you believe to be true about prosperity, abundance, happiness, inner peace, and spiritual awakening, and to expand your view of who you really are, what your life is really about, and what you're really capable of, what's really possible for you, and where you're really headed in your life. Words are hopelessly inadequate when it comes to describing the truth, so the words I choose to use here are pointers only. You're invited to resist that temptation to take my words too literally or too seriously. The basic premise the teachings build from is simple. Who you really are is infinite being, a magnificent spiritual being who lives in a constant state of limitless power, abundance, wisdom, and joy. Besides infinite power, wisdom, abundance, and joy, your natural state includes an unlimited desire to play, explore, and express yourself creatively. A popular phrase for describing this is, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. From this moment forward, I'll refer to you to who you really are as you, and who you think yourself to be as you. He changes from capital letters to normal letters. In the teachings, I call the infinite being you really are expanded self-consciousness and true creative essence, depending on the context. Coming from the infinite state I just described, you with a capital Y decided you wanted to play, explore, and express yourself with a capital Y creatively by participating in a game called the human game. The human game is play entirely in consciousness, in your mind, if you will. When I use the term game, I mean any activity that's done by choice and provides the opportunity to play, explore, be challenged, be entertained, and express oneself creatively. Therefore, from that perspective, sports are games, writing is a game, painting and sculpting are games, watching a movie is a game, mountain climbing is a game. Etc. You might have a belief that human experience must be a lot more serious or significant than a game, but as a metaphor, comparing human experience to a game is very useful, and you'll see if you choose to go more deeply into the teachings. Like any other game, the human game has its own set of unique rules, regulation, and structure. I'm fond of comparing the mechanic for creating and playing the human game to the making of a movie, and often call the human experience a total immersion movie experience. I'm a big fan of Star Trek TV show and movies. In Star Trek, there's a concept called the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is a core principle that guides the actions of the crew of the Starship Enterprise as they explore space. The human game has prime directives too. In phase 1 of the game, the prime directive is to fully explore the experience of limitation and restriction. to play with and explore what happens when you limit infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite abundance, and true joy as the natural state of the real you with a capital Y. As a result, the human game is designed to be jam-packed with all sorts of limiting and restricted experiences, ideas, and concepts. Concepts like death, poverty, loss, fear, pain, shame, struggle, and sorrow have been creating the human game like hurdles on a running track that present limitations and tremendous opportunities to play, explore, and express creatively. I often use the metaphor of the sun and clouds to reinforce the idea. The sun is the equivalent of who you really are. The cloud cover is the equivalent of everything that blocks you from experiencing your natural state, even if you know about it intellectually. The opportunity then is for you to playing first. First, begin playing the human game as an infant. Second, experience the building of large, dense layers of cloud cover as we grow up. Third, play with and explore limitation and restriction for as long as you wish to. You with a capital Y. Rediscover your natural true state, your with a capital Y. Knock out the cloud cover. Continue playing the game, but in radically different ways, living and breathing your natural state 24/7, your natural state with a capital Y. These ideas I discussed in many other teachings, all I knew, but it's locked very differently in the teachings available to my sphere of influence. The process of rediscovering your natural state and the truth about the human experience is what I call playing phase 2 of the human game. To play most games, you will have players. The human game works the same way. Players take the shape of who you think as yourself: parents, siblings, relatives, neighbors, teachers, friends, bosses, enemies, associates, strangers. Strangers, not strangers. The role of players playing in your human game is very similar, but also very different, as you will see within the teachings. The roles of actors play in the making of a movie, fictional characters play in novels, and characters play in video games. That is, they say and do what the script tells them to say and do to support the perfect unfoldment of a unique story. Since who you really are is an infinite being, in order to play the human game, you must use all your power and creativity to wipe out every last trace of memory of who you really are in your natural state. Again, that idea has been shared in other teachings, but the key components of the truth behind it haven't generally been left out or distorted. Key point: if memory or awareness of the truth of who you really are and the natural state appears in phase 1, it must remain at the idea, conceptual, and intellectual level. Never become a consistent experience. To play the human game in phase 1, you must create the illusion of splitting yourself in two parts. First, infinite being, who you really are, the part of you that remains invisible, managing all aspects of the human game from behind the scenes. Second, player, the part of you totally immersed himself, herself in the game, and doesn't remember who she really is or what really is going on. The player is part of you who's reading my words right now, is who you always thought yourself to be. Words get tricky here, but it's important to understand that while the player and the real you seem to appear separate, they are actually one being that's unified at a very deep and profound level. The apparent separation is all an illusion created by sleight of hand in consciousness. As part of a getting process that's required to play the human game, you choose to begin the game by taking the form of a helpless tiny infant. That's no accident, and is deeply symbolic and significant. Once you are born, and in some cases, while you're still in the womb prior to being born, you start having experiences, or you start participating in what I call unfolding stories, that ultimately convince you you're the opposite of who you really are. I explained that point of phase 1 of the human game is to explore limitation and restriction, to explore, that is, an experience that's opposite to you, who you really are. So, since your natural states include infinite power, varying degrees of powerlessness will be explored in phase 1 by design. Since your natural state includes infinite wisdom, varying degrees of being not wise will be explored in phase 1. Not wise meaning there's so much you don't know that you must learn, making mistakes, being ignorant, etc. by design. Since your natural states include infinite abundance, varying degrees of being not abundant will be explored in phase 1. Not abundant meaning a lack of abundance, including money, ups and downs, successes and failures, etc. by design. Since your natural state includes true joy, varying degrees of being unhappy and unjoyful will be explored in phase 1 by design. We struggle with all this opposite of why we really are we struggle with all this opposite of why we really are experiences day in and day out. But few people realize they are all part of the grand design of phase 1 and that they provide extraordinary opportunities for who you really are to play, explore, and express itself creatively. Many games are played on a field court, or a board of some kind. The same is true of the human game where the playing field is called three-dimensional reality, or the universe. Actually, 4 dimensions, actually. In addition to being convinced you're the opposite of who you really are in phase 1, you must also be convinced that the playing field is real, that it has tremendous power over you. In the popular success, self-help and psychological literature, that convincing process often called programming or conditioning. Key point, the mind machine was created to support the phase 1 experience just described. Once the convincing and forgetting is complete, in order to actually play the game in phase 1, the truth must remain hidden or kept out of reach until the time comes to enter phase 2 of the game. You can look at it this way. Imagine the truth of who you really are in the natural state is a jewel. In phase 1, you must create an elaborate security system to keep you away from it and set off alarms if you start getting close to it, like a jewelry store or museum might create to protect their valuable objects. If you've been a frustrated seeker of truth, it's important to see that keeping you away from the truth was done intentionally. It was the design of the game. I do agree with that. The failure to find, live, or be what you've been seeking was not your personal failure or the failure of the teachers, gurus, mentors, or coaches you embrace. After praying within and exploring limitation and restriction in phase 1, there is the opportunity but not the requirement to move into phase 2. At the point, there is the opportunity but not the requirement to begin a quest to rediscover the truth and reclaim a direct experience and direct knowing of the infinite power, wisdom, abundance, and true joy. That is your natural state. As I explain who you really are, the natural state and the truth are the equivalent of the sun. Cloud cover is the equivalent of everything blocking you from knowing or experiencing it. Therefore, it could be said that in phase 2 you go deep into the cloud cover, systematically undermine its structural integrity and ultimately knock out huge chunks of it. Once you knock out enough cloud cover, and the sun of who you really are starts shining through immediately and automatically, everything then transforms in your daily experience inside out in a radical and permanent ways. Key point, if you don't enter phase 2, and you don't actually knock out the cloud cover, nothing significant will ever truly change for you. That is why so many personal and spiritual development approaches fail to produce true and lasting results. Key point, I found a way to gain access to a cloud cover, drill tunnels through it, poke holes in it, and ultimately knock out huge chunks of it metaphorically. That's what makes the teachings so unique and so radically transformative. After knocking out so much of the cloud cover as a unique journey includes, you have the opportunity but not the requirement to enter phase 3. At that point, playing the human game is actually experiencing an extraordinary adventure. It was always experienced that by the real you, but in phase 3 it is experienced and perceived that way by you too, among other benefits. You with a capital Y and you with a normal Y. I'm playing in phase 3 at the time I'm writing this. At the time of this writing. Key point, experiencing true happiness as defined as the ultimate key to happiness book is phase 3 experience. 3. Many people who discover the teachings notice the following question appear in their minds. Why should an infinite being want to experience being opposite to its natural state and playing a game like the human game we've just described? Why does anyone play any game? Who made up football, basketball, golf, soccer, chess, Monopoly? Who made up all the crazy rules, regulations, and structures that go along with the games we play? Why did they do it? Why would someone willingly choose to leave their warm and comfortable home to experience the pain, hardship, and risk of death involved in a game like climbing massive mountain like Mount Everest? The answer to all these questions at the core is for the sheer fun, challenge, and exhilaration of playing, no matter how difficult it seems at times. The same is true for you and you. Who you really are. Who you really are is a wonderfully adventurous spirit, ever eager to play, explore, and express itself creatively. The human game of levitation is no big deal to the real you, with a capital Y. The real big deal is hiding and forgetting the truth so you can play. This question might also have appeared in your mind. Why would an infinite being choose to experience such horrors as abuse, sickness, poverty, struggle, starvation, maiming, rape, murder, and death? The real you sees no horror in all those experiences. The real you knows it's all just a game being played in consciousness. An extraordinary story unfolding in consciousness, similar to experience we're watching TV shows, reading great novels, or playing video games. As above, so below. The real you knows all the experiences are just what I call total emotional movie experiences, and that they only seem real and horrible to those who are totally immersed within them and convinced they are real. Key points. Don't be surprised if a lot of resistance to what I just said is swirling through your mind. It's to be expected. Should you choose to go more deeply into the teachings, you will have the opportunity to prove the accuracy and truthfulness of this for yourself beyond the shadow of any doubt. When we talk about the creative power wielded by the real you to play the human game in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, we're talking about power beyond anything you can imagine right now. We're talking about the power to create absolutely anything, any person, any place, anything, any experience inside or outside of you. True omnipotence. So where in the world do you hide the power of that magnitude? In the only place capable of handling within the human experience itself, right inside all the limiting and restrictive experiences that compose the human game. Let me give you a few examples. When playing the human game, many people experience what we call neglect, loss, poverty, tragedy, and abuse. As we have discussed, the real you has the power to create anything it could ever want or imagine instantly. Therefore, it is not possible for the real you to truly experience neglect, loss, poverty, tragedy, or abuse. What is possible to support playing in phase 1 is to create the illusion of such experiences and convince you the illusions are real. We lead our life carefully seeking happiness and doing our best to avoid events and circumstances that will be painful. Inevitably, however, our lives are filled with the very conditions they try hardest to avoid. The more we play with the rules we were taught for playing the human game, and the more we try to avoid painful conditions, whatever they might be, the more we seem to experience them, and the more out of control and powerless we feel. That's all part of phase 1 of the human game is all about by design. Even though the human game may seem excruciatingly painful at times, the real you is revealing in the cheer of joy of playing. And if you enter move into phase 2 and phase 3 of the game, 3, you can experience everything in the same way. Think of it this way. J.K. Rowling is the author of Harry Potter's books, which are often used as metaphors in the teachings. In the 7-part book series, a lot is experienced by the characters in the story: poverty and abundance, happiness, sorrow and fear, support, loyalty and betrayal, birth and death, battles between good and evil, etc. While the story was being written, J.K. Rowling was experiencing true joy, playing, exploring, and expressing herself creatively. She experienced everything the characters did, but in a very different way. As we discussed throughout Phase 1, the real you must keep you from remembering who you really are in order to stay and play the human game. To maintain the myth of limitation, the real you creates a voice within you that discourages any attempt to go near the hiding places of true power, wisdom, abundance, and joy. The voice tells you to avoid this or that, warns you of impending danger, scares the hell out of you if you try to peel back the illusions or disguises to see what's really going on. You now know that the voice to be coming from the mind machine. That voice is your diligent, constant companion, ever vigilant in preventing you from seeing, knowing, and experiencing the truth. That is, until you're ready to begin playing Phase 2 game. It is very supportive to acknowledge the presence of the voice, the real you created for you. And you recognize and appreciate the royal place as a place in your life. Like a novelist knows just the right time for things to happen in a story, the real you knows when it is time for you to rediscover the truth and regain a direct experience of your infinite power, abundance, wisdom, and true joy. It won't surprise you to hear that the time is different for all of us. So the real you guards the hidden places of truth and keeps your security system in place until your time comes. Key point. Many players find their way to me when their time comes. Oh my god, how messianic did that sound? A little bit narcissistic. When your time comes, the real you displays the same diligence and consistency in supporting you to find and reclaim your infiniteness as it did hiding it. Once you really get that you chose to play the human game and experience the limited and restrictive events and circumstances you have had to date, you can then look at your life through the different lenses and begin to see the brilliant and miraculous ways the real you hid the truth from you, so you could play the extraordinary game called human game. If there's a history of poverty and neglect in your life, for example, you can see that those experiences were what was required to help you play the human game the way you wanted to play in Phase 1. We can all look at things in our lives that seem to keep reoccurring despite our best efforts to prevent them, and see they are precisely what was required to pull off the Phase 1's miracle. Giving up the victim role might be the hardest part of transitioning into Phase 2 and Phase 3. It sure was for me. That's a key point. There you go. Many players are really attached to the concept of blame, the desire to have someone else fix them, or the belief that they are too far gone or unfixable. In most games, there's a clear signal when changes or shifts are made. In football, there's half time. In baseball, the innings change. In golf, there's a new hole to be played. So it is with the human game. No matter what experiences you choose to have while playing the game, from what's viewed as most negative to the most positive, whether from rags to riches or riches to rags, whether the fame to fortune or infamy and disgrace, when your time comes to enter Phase 2, you orchestrate experiences so that you say, wait a minute, something's wrong here. There has to be more to this. There must be more going on than what I'm seeing. Getting to that point with some in the seriousness of your desire to see and experience the truth opens the door to Phase 2, your opportunity to start discovering the truth and ultimately to live in Phase 3. That's also when you begin to entertain the possibility that you can actually experience the truth of who you really are as you stay here and continue playing the human game in phase 3. As you move through phase 2, you've been given a guidance for as if on a gigantic electricity went off, so I have to finish this video later because I'm reading from my computer. I'm recording from a third world country. This is part of the experience of a third world country.